What happens when Hollywood's toughest action star meets daytime television's most controversial host? And a simple interview turns into an all-out verbal war that leaves everyone in the studio speechless. You're about to witness one of the most explosive celebrity meltdowns ever caught on live television, where Vin Diesel completely loses his composure after Joy Behar pushes him too far with her relentless attacks. This is the moment that had social media buzzing for weeks and left the View's producers scrambling to contain the damage. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story gets wilder with every passing minute. It was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance. Vin Diesel, the man behind the Fast and Furious franchise, was scheduled for a standard 5-minute segment on The View to discuss his latest film. What started as typical celebrity small talk quickly transformed into something nobody in that studio was prepared for. Least of all the show's producers, who watched in horror as their live broadcast spiraled completely out of control. The trouble began the moment Vin settled into his chair. Joy Behar, known for her sharp tongue and controversial opinions, wasted no time launching into what appeared to be a carefully planned attack. Her opening question wasn't about his new movie or his successful career. Instead, she immediately went for the jugular with a tone that caught everyone off guard. So, Joy began with that signature smirk of hers. Let's talk about your reputation in Hollywood. There have been some pretty serious allegations about your behavior on set, haven't there? Multiple co-stars have spoken out about your unprofessional conduct, your constant delays, and frankly your ego getting in the way of making good movies. The studio fell silent. The other co-hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly not expecting Joy to come out swinging this hard right from the start. Vin's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure, at least initially. "Joy, I'm not sure where you're getting your information," Vin replied, his voice steady, but with an edge that anyone who knew him would recognize as a warning sign. "I've worked with some incredible people over the years, and I've always tried to bring professionalism and respect to every project I'm involved in." But Joy wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed emboldened by his measured response, as if she interpreted his calmness as weakness rather than restraint. "Come on, Vin. Let's be honest with the audience," she pressed, leaning forward in her chair with that confrontational posture she was famous for. "Dwayne Johnson publicly called you out for being difficult and unprofessional. Michelle Rodriguez has hinted at on-set problems. Even your directors have had to work around your demands and tantrums. Don't you think it's time to take some responsibility for the toxic environment you create?" The audience was completely silent now. You could feel the tension building like pressure in a volcano about to erupt. Whoopi Goldberg, sitting at the head of the table, looked like she wanted to intervene, but seemed frozen by the intensity of the moment. Vin's hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles turning white. His famous calm demeanor was beginning to crack, and you could see the storm building behind his eyes. "Joy, I came here to talk about my film and connect with the audience," he said, his voice now carrying a dangerous undertone that made everyone in the studio shift uncomfortably. "I didn't come here to be ambushed with gossip and lies. If you want to have a conversation, let's have one, but if you want to attack me with tabloid garbage, then maybe I'm sitting at the wrong table." Joy's response was like pouring gasoline on a fire. She actually laughed, a dismissive sound that echoed through the studio and clearly hit Vin like a physical blow. "Oh, so now it's all lies when someone calls you out on your behavior," she shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle any criticism, can you? You surround yourself with yes men and enablers. And the moment someone tells you the truth, you throw a tantrum like a spoiled child." That was the moment. That was when something inside Vin Diesel snapped. The man who had built his career on playing characters who never backed down from a fight was about to show America that sometimes the line between the actor and the role disappears completely. His voice dropped to a low growl that sent chills through everyone watching. "You want to know what's toxic, Joy? Sitting behind that desk and tearing people down for ratings. You want to talk about unprofessional behavior? How about inviting someone onto your show and then ambushing them with personal attacks? How about doing zero research and just repeating whatever garbage you read on some gossip blog?" The other hosts were now visibly uncomfortable. Sarah Haynes was staring at her hands. Sunny host looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. And even Whoopi seemed at a loss for how to regain control of her show. But Joy wasn't finished. In what would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation, she decided to escalate even further. "You know what, Vin? Maybe the problem isn't that I'm asking tough questions. Maybe the problem is that you can't handle the truth about who you really are. Behind all those muscles and all that tough guy acting, you're just an insecure man who can't deal with reality. The studio erupted, not with applause or cheers, but with a collective gasp that seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the room. Even the camera operators stopped what they were doing, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Vin stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled over. His massive frame towered over the table as he leaned toward Joy, his voice now a barely controlled roar that made everyone in the vicinity take a step back. "You don't know the first thing about me, lady?" he thundered, pointing a finger directly at her face. "You sit there in your bubble throwing stones at people who actually work for a living, who actually create something meaningful. You want to talk about insecurity? Let's talk about someone whose entire career is built on tearing other people down because they're too bitter and talentless to build anything themselves." The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Joy's face went pale, then red, then something approaching purple as the full impact of Vin's verbal assault hit her. For perhaps the first time in her television career, Joy Behar was speechless, but only for a moment. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "How dare you come onto my show and talk to me like that? Security should throw you out of here right now." Vin let out a bitter laugh that sent chills through everyone watching. "Your show? Lady, this isn't your show. This is supposed to be a place where people come to have conversations, not get ambushed by some bitter husband who gets her kicks, destroying people on live television." Whoopi finally found her voice, desperately trying to regain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation. Okay, let's all just take a breath here. Vin, please sit down. Joy, maybe we should move on to something else." But Joy was beyond reason now. Vin's words had clearly struck a nerve, and she was going for blood. Has been. I've been on television longer than you've been making those ridiculous car movies. At least I don't have to rely on CGI and explosions to cover up my complete lack of talent." The audience was in shock. Several people had their hands over their mouths. Others were recording on their phones, and you could hear nervous murmurs rippling through the crowd. The producers in the control room were probably having panic attacks, knowing they were watching their carefully controlled show implode in real time. Vin's response was ice cold and devastating. "Talent? You want to talk about talent? I've built a franchise that's made billions of dollars and employed thousands of people. I've created characters that inspire kids around the world. What have you done besides sit behind that desk and spread negativity? When's the last time you created anything that made people feel good instead of just tearing them down?" Sarah Haynes attempted to jump in, her voice shaky with nervousness. "Maybe we should focus on the positive aspects of Vin's new film. Can we talk about the message of family and loyalty that runs through your movies?" Joy whipped around to face Sarah with such fury that the younger host actually flinched. "Don't you dare try to change the subject. This man just insulted me and my entire career on national television. I'm not going to sit here and pretend we're having some friendly chat about his movies." Vin slammed his hand down on the table with such force that everyone's water glasses jumped. The sound echoed through the studio like a gunshot. "You started this, Joy. You invited me here under false pretenses, and then tried to destroy me with lies and gossip. You want to dish it out, but you can't take it when someone fights back. I ask legitimate questions about your professional behavior." Joy shot back, her voice now shrill and desperate. "If you can't handle basic accountability, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye." "Legitimate questions?" Vin's voice rose to a level that made the microphones crackle. "You ambushed me with tabloid trash and personal attacks. You didn't ask questions, you made accusations. There's a difference. And if you were actually a journalist instead of a glorified gossip columnist, you'd know that." Sunny host tried her own intervention, speaking in the most diplomatic tone she could manage. "I think what Joy was trying to explore is the broader conversation about accountability in Hollywood and how celebrities handle criticism." Vin turned to face Sunny, and for a moment his expression softened slightly, recognizing that she was trying to be fair. "Sunny, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but there's a difference between criticism and character assassination. I've been in this business for over 2 decades. I know the difference between a tough interview and a hit job, but Joy couldn't let it go. The woman who had made a career out of having the last word was not about to be silenced now. Character assassination. You're the one who called me bitter and talentless on national television. You're the one who's having a complete meltdown because someone dared to ask you tough questions." Vin spun back toward her, his eyes blazing with a fury that made everyone in the studio take another step back. Tough questions? Lady, you didn't ask me about my work, my craft, my experiences, or anything meaningful. You came at me with gossip and tried to humiliate me on live television. If you want to see a meltdown, keep pushing me. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't acting. This wasn't publicity. This was a man who had been pushed beyond his breaking point and was barely containing his rage. Whoopi made one more desperate attempt to salvage her show. Vin, I need you to lower your voice. Joy, I need you to take it down a notch. We're on live television here, and we need to remember our audience. Joy's response showed just how far she had fallen into her own ego-driven fury. I'm not taking anything down. This man came onto our show and showed his true colors. America deserves to see what kind of person he really is when he doesn't get his way. That was the final straw. Vince's composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped completely. He leaned across the table, getting so close to Joy that she actually pressed herself back into her chair and spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper, but somehow more terrifying than any shout. You want America to see who I really am. I'm someone who believes in respect, in treating people with dignity, in building rather than destroying. You want to know who you really are. You're someone who hides behind that desk and destroys people for entertainment. You're someone who's so miserable with your own life that you have to make everyone else miserable, too. Joy's face was now bright red. Whether from embarrassment or rage, nobody could tell. Get away from me. Get away from me right now. This is harassment. This is intimidation. This is called standing up for myself, Vin replied, not moving an inch. Something you clearly didn't expect when you decided to ambush me with your little performance today. The other hosts were frantically looking at each other, at the producers off camera, at anyone who might have a solution to this unprecedented disaster unfolding live on television. The audience was completely silent now, sensing that they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Anna Navarro, who had been unusually quiet during the entire exchange, finally spoke up with obvious desperation in her voice. Can we please just remember that we're all professionals here? Can we find a way to have a constructive conversation? Joy turned on Anna with the fury of someone whose entire worldview was being challenged. Constructive? There's nothing constructive about what's happening here. This man has shown complete disrespect for me, for this show, and for our audience. Vin straightened up, his voice now carrying a finality that suggested he was done with the entire charade. No, Joy. You've shown disrespect. You've shown disrespect for me, for your audience, and for what this show is supposed to represent. I came here to connect with people, to share something positive, and you turned it into a circus. The silence that followed Vin's words was deafening. Even the camera crew had stopped moving, transfixed by the raw emotion, and barely contained violence crackling through the studio. Joy sat frozen in her chair, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to speak, but no words would come. For the first time in her television career, she appeared to realize she had pushed someone too far. But Vin wasn't finished. The dam had burst, and years of dealing with Hollywood politics, media attacks, and industry backstabbing came pouring out in a torrent of raw honesty that no one in that studio was prepared for. You know what the real tragedy is here, Joy? He continued, his voice now steady, but filled with a quiet intensity that was somehow more frightening than his earlier shouting. You had a chance to have a real conversation with someone who's lived through incredible experiences, who's worked with amazing people, who's seen the industry change over decades. Instead, you chose to be a bully. Joy finally found her voice, but it was shaky and defensive, completely different from her usual aggressive tone. I am not a bully. I ask hard questions. That's my job. Your job. Vin laughed. But there was no humor in it, only disgust. Your job is supposed to be informing people, entertaining them, maybe even inspiring them. Instead, you use your platform to destroy people. You hide behind the excuse of journalism. But real journalists don't ambush their guests with gossip and lies. Whoopi made one final desperate attempt to salvage what was left of her show. Vin, please, let's just move forward. We still have time to talk about your film, about the positive message you want to share with our audience. Vin turned to Whoopi with something approaching respect in his eyes. Whoopi, I respect you. I always have. But I can't pretend that what just happened here is okay. I can't sit here and act like nothing happened while this woman, he gestured toward Joy without even looking at her, sits there proud of herself for trying to humiliate me on national television. Joy suddenly found her fight again. as if Vin's dismissive gesture had reignited her fury. Proud of myself? I'm proud that I didn't let you intimidate me. I'm proud that I didn't back down when you tried to bully me. The hypocrisy was so blatant that even some audience members started shaking their heads. Here was a woman who had spent the entire segment attacking a guest. And now she was claiming to be the victim when he fought back. Vin's response was swift and brutal. Intimidate you, lady. I never threatened you. I never raised my hand to you. I never did anything but respond to your attacks with words. If you feel intimidated, it's because you know everything I said about you is true and you can't handle hearing it. Sarah Haynes, looking like she was about to cry from the stress of the situation, made one more attempt at diplomacy. Maybe we can all agree that emotions are running high and we should take a step back. But Joy was beyond reason now. Her professional facade completely shattered. I don't need to take a step back from anything. I did my job today. I asked the questions that needed to be asked. And if he can't handle it, that says everything about who he is as a person. That was the moment when Vin Diesel completely lost it. Every ounce of control, every bit of Hollywood politeness, every trace of media training went out the window as he erupted with a fury that left everyone in the studio stunned. Who I am as a person, he roared, his voice echoing off the walls. I'll tell you who I am as a person. I'm someone who's worked my way up from nothing. I'm someone who's never forgotten where I came from. I'm someone who employs hundreds of people and tries to make movies that bring families together. But most importantly, I'm someone who doesn't hide behind a desk and destroy people for a living. He pointed directly at Joy, his fingers shaking with rage. You want to know who you are as a person? You're a miserable human being who gets paid to make other people miserable. You're someone so bitter and twisted that you can't stand to see other people succeed. You're a cancer on television, and everyone in this building knows it. The gasps from the audience were audible. Several crew members had their hands over their mouths in shock. This wasn't just a celebrity having a bad interview anymore. This was a complete and total destruction of the show's format and everything The View was supposed to represent. Joy's face went white, then red, then white again. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You can't talk to me like that. You can't say those things to me. Vin leaned back in his chair, suddenly calm again, as if the explosion of anger had purged something from his system. I just did. And you know what the difference is between you and me? When I say something harsh, it's because I was pushed to my limit by someone who spent 20 minutes attacking me. When you say something harsh, it's just another Tuesday for you. Whoopi was frantically gesturing to her producers off camera, clearly looking for some kind of direction on how to handle this unprecedented situation. The show was supposed to end in less than 5 minutes, but nobody knew how to bridge from this nuclear wasteland of a conversation to the typical closing credits. Anna Navarro tried one last time to find some middle ground. I think we can all agree that this got more heated than anyone intended. Maybe we can find a way to end this on a more positive note. Joy turned on Anna with the desperation of someone drowning. Positive note, there's nothing positive about what happened here today. This man came onto our show and verbally abused me for doing my job. Vin's laugh was cold and humorless. Verbally abused you? You mean I fought back when you tried to destroy my reputation with lies and gossip? You mean I didn't just sit there and take it like all your other victims? Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not built that way. My other victims. Joy's voice cracked as she said it, the weight of the accusation clearly hitting home. Yeah, your other victims, Vin replied, his voice now deadly quiet. All the people who've sat in this chair over the years and let you tear them apart for your entertainment. All the careers you've tried to damage. All the reputations you've tried to destroy. Well, congratulations, Joy. You picked the wrong guy today. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Everyone knew they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years. Something that would probably end careers and change lives. Whoopi finally found her voice for what would be her final words of the show. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our final thoughts. But Vin stood up before she could finish the sentence. No, Whoopi. I won't be here when you come back. I've said everything I need to say. He looked directly into the main camera, speaking to the millions of viewers watching at home. To everyone watching, I came here today to share something positive, to connect with people who support my work. Instead, I was ambushed and attacked by someone who seems to enjoy destroying people for entertainment. He paused, his eyes moving to each of the co-hosts before finally settling on Joy one last time. I hope this was worth it to you, Joy. I hope tearing me down made you feel better about yourself. But just remember, when you're sitting here tomorrow attacking your next victim, that some people will fight back. Without another word, Vin Diesel walked off the set, leaving behind a stunned studio, a destroyed show format, and one host whose career would never quite recover from the day she picked a fight with the wrong person. The cameras kept rolling for another few seconds, capturing Joy's shell-shocked expression and the other hosts' desperate attempts to process what had just happened before finally cutting to commercial break. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen a celebrity completely lose it like this on live television? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to Chronicle Chat for more wild celebrity stories that you won't believe actually happened.